What's happening, everybody? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Very special guest with us. It's Matthew Modine.
Matthew Modine.
Oh, that's him. I'm DJ. Look at this guy's energy right now. Can we just talk about the bandana, the jacket?
Yeah.
How are you?
Nice to see you.
Very nice to meet
Thank you for having me on your show.
How's everything going?
Everything's grand. You know,
Yeah.
I just finished a film, kind of a horror genre film that's a step away from that horror called in Cincinnati called Foundation, The Foundation, and it's part of the Wrong Turn movies. But there's no zombies in this one.
No
so
zombies?
It's a diversion from the Wrong Turn movies. But I liked it because it's a story about a father who loves his daughter, and she makes a wrong turn and ends up in this horrible place in the Appalachian Mountains, and he goes to try to find her and save her from the horror that she's found herself in.
It's got universal appeal right there.
Yeah. Liam Neeson's a friend of mine. He's done all right with
That's
it.
true. Yeah, he's got the whole concept there.
Yeah.
So if it works for Liam, it's like, hey, let's put in this context
I didn't
here.
have a cool line like Liam. You know, I will find
you and I will kill you.
Yeah. I didn't get the cool line, but I get to save my daughter, so I'm happy.
There you go.
About that.
That's pretty good. I feel like you've kind of done a little bit of everything in your career at this point.
Yeah, it's been a good ride. You know, it's been. One of the reasons that I love this job is that the opportunities you get to work with different people and learn different things. I've flown a B-17 when I was doing Memphis Belle with the real captain of the plane,
Wow.
Robert Morgan. I learned to sail America's Cup yachts, you know, and then the artists that you get to work with, you know, from Stanley Kubrick to Francis Coppola to Alan Parker. You know, it's a wonderful job, you know, get travel all over the world and meet extraordinary people. I think it's always funny when, excuse me, when people say, what does he know? He's just an actor. And it was like, well, you know.
No, good deal. Yeah.
If you're paying attention, if you keep your ears open and your mouth shut, you can learn a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, all the places you've seen, all the people you've interacted with, just life experiences alone. Like, you have a ton of wisdom to share with people.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
Yes, sir.
And you get to play a congressman now too. You get to have that one in
this was really fun. You know, first, Uzo Aduba is an extraordinary.
Fantastic.
She's just unbelievable, and I think that it's now when Oscar-worthy films start coming out, and her performance as Miss Virginia is extraordinary. This is based on a true story about a woman who worked so hard to provide opportunities for people of color and underprivileged people. And there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, walk alone. If you want to go far, walk together. And so she didn't just make this journey on her own. She created a movement and got hundreds of people to get involved, which is now saved and empowered the lives of thousands of young people. I just saw the movie 2 nights ago.
What'd you think?
And I became unbelievably emotional because when, you know, certain movies are just for fun, like the movie that I just did in Cincinnati. It's just a scary, fun thriller. And then some movies are comedies. And then there's movies that get made that change your life, you know, that you realize that those amphitheaters that were built in Greece and Italy and for the purpose of hearing people sing songs and tell stories, that this art form that we're a part of has no real sort of intrinsic value and yet is invaluable to our culture, that we help people to see things that they may have not seen before and to understand things in different ways. Harper Lee in her book To Kill a Mockingbird says that we never truly understand another person until we get inside their skin and move around in it.
I like that.
And so that's what we do, we artists, you know, we get inside, whether it's a director, the writer, the actors, the costume designers, the production designers, we get inside the circumstances and the people that we're playing, and for the purpose of helping people to understand the similarities between us, you know, to have more empathy for somebody who may have slipped and fallen, and to remind us how powerful forgiveness is.
I think empathy is a great word for our times today, and change also. And here's a woman who refused to accept the status quo. So what was it like for you to be on the other side of that, in Congress where stuff isn't getting done, but to see a woman who refused to accept what was happening in front of her?
Yeah. Well, I think this guy, how I chose to play him was like, imagine if Martin Luther King would have given up and just said, it's just too hard.
Life would look a lot different right now.
Yeah, I just give up. So this guy was like one of those people who wanted to affect change, who wanted to create positive change, and thought he could do that through politics. And then he runs up to against the wall of the truth of politics.
Right, he finds out what's really going on.
That it's so hard to affect positive change. It's so hard to get a consensus and get people to agree that this is something that's good, because it's like NIMBY, not in my backyard. Nobody wants those city bikes in their backyard. They don't want them on their street. But we all agree that the necessity to address environmental problems, but we don't want the bike share in front of our house. We believe in recycling, but nobody puts their plastic bottles in the recycling bin. Exactly. We're so lazy and we're so ignorant. And so anyway, this guy Clifford that I play, he's a politician who gave up.
Yeah, he's mailed it in.
Yeah, you can look at my clothes that I wear in the show, and he stopped buying clothes in the 80s, and he's drinking a little bit too much. And then he meets this force of nature that comes forward and encourages him to fight the fight that he started so many years before that he'd given up on. And she encourages him, and through her tenacity and through her will, through the real lady, Miss Virginia, against insurmountable odds, achieved something that they didn't believe could be done. And when I saw it at the Parsons School of Design the other day, I just started crying. I started crying because one of the reasons that I got in this business was to be a part of something that affected people's lives, and so positively, to be a part of the solution. That's a wonderful thing to be, the side of history to be on.
Yeah, no question about it. Definitely want to be on the right side of history, especially with all this stuff, no question. I feel like you've had stuff that has definitely impacted people's lives, like even younger kids with Stranger Things now. I mean, this is a cultural phenomenon. And it must be funny for you too, because like you've been in this game for a long time. The industry's changed, and then boom, you get thrown into something like this. Like what was the pitch for Stranger Things when you first sat down with the Duffer Brothers?
Well, I think they'd be honored to know that to share with you that I turned it down about 3 times.
Are you serious? You're famous for turning everything down.
Yeah, I just thought I didn't want to play a bad guy. I didn't want to play some evil person. And what they were pitching just sounded really peculiar, and I said I didn't want to do that. And
why didn't you want to do it?
Because I like playing like this guy, Miss Virginia. I want to be a good person.
I gotcha.
I want to solve problems. I don't want to create problems. I don't want to be the guy that's the guy who made
causing all the problems.
Yeah. And that they were so passionate. They were so flattering to me, and knew all of my work, and I mean in nuanced details, picking things from performances that I'd given over a 30-year career. And it didn't seem like it was that big a risk, because it was going to be 8 weeks.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, we'll roll the dice and hope for the best. And I was doing another project, a film in Italy, and I was completely unaware, because I didn't have Netflix in my hotel room, and I didn't know anything about what was happening after the show had been released, and it became really an overnight success. And little Italian children, young little kids, Papa, Papa.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and I thought, how did they know that my children call me Papa?
Yeah.
And then I realized that they were talking about Papa. Yeah. And it was wonderful. I mean, it gave me another generation of fans. It kept me, because this is the thing, as you get older in this business, you want to remain relevant. You want to remain part of the conversation. They used to say that there's 4 stages to an actor's career. Like, who's Matthew Modine? Get me Matthew Modine. Get me someone like Matthew Modine. Who's Matthew Modine? So
full circle.
Yeah. So if you're lucky, you get to go around a couple times. So that it is every actor's career is like a roller coaster. There's few people who have careers like you know, Clint Eastwood or Tom Cruise or Madonna, you know, I mean, as a singer, they go from success to success to success. And, you know, and so you have to live through those failures. You have to live through the no's, the rejections, and that's a big part of this business. And you know, I don't mind it because I'm a humble person. I've never had big expectations about materialism, you know, materialistic things, big houses or private planes and boats and things like that. I prefer to go on someone's boat and then say, "I'll see you later. Thanks for the ride." You know, I don't want to own those things. And you know, and I'm an environmentalist, so I want to live in a world where we consume less. You know. Which is problematic in a world that is structured on consumerism and materialism. And materialism, yeah.
So with that being said, what was it like when things hit for you in the 80s, when Full Metal Jacket comes out and Vision
Quest? Oh, it was amazing.
I mean, it must have been a thrill, given everything you just said. Still, like that's a huge deal.
It's amazing, but you know, I give Jim Carrey credit for this, but he said that what people present to you is their best selves. I don't get the my life sucks and everything's horrible. You walk down the streets in New York and people say, "Hey, Maddie, you know, I love you. I love your work." And you know, and what kind of job can we have in this world where people say they recognize you for your work and say, "I love you. I love your work."
Not many other jobs like that.
No, thank you for telling that story. You know, and there's so many different kinds of stories that I've had a relationship with so many different cultures and subcultures in our society, you know, from In the Band Played On to Birdie to Full Metal Jacket. So, you know, so I have the military, I have sports figures.
Yeah, you've really run the gamut.
Doctors.
Yeah. How about Full Metal Jacket? I mean, you've talked about this at length, but what are some things people wouldn't know about Stanley Kubrick, or just that experience in general that still sticks in your mind all these years later?
Well, there's an app. If you have an iPad, there's my book, Full Metal Jacket Diary. It's a diary that I kept when I was 20,
the whole experience, right?
24, 25 years old, because it was 2 years of my life making the movie. So it's kind of a portrait of an artist as a young man, and the book it's really fun, and it's a real peek behind the curtain.
What an interesting time to do that, not only for the movie, but just in your life in general at that point.
So it's a peek behind the curtain to get a better understanding of who Stanley Kubrick was and what his process was. It's a real insight into that. But if you have an iPad, because the book is very difficult to find, but the iPad app is like $3.
Oh, cool.
And I narrate it. There's music. There's sound effects. It's an awesome, award-winning app. And all the photographs that I took while I was on the set, we did high-res scans of them. And
oh my gosh, that's
it's
incredible.
Really, really cool. But what was it like? I can't compare the experience of working with Kubrick to any other experience I've had, because it was 2 years. So usually when you work on a film, you know, like the one that I just did was shot in 5 weeks.
Yeah, real quick. Bang it out, put it in theaters, it's on digital.
Yeah.
Totally different experience.
It's a whole different experience. So, and then, you know, it wasn't just because it was 2 years, but it was Stanley Kubrick, who is arguably one of the greatest filmmakers ever to get behind a motion picture camera. But what would surprise a lot of people was how small the crew was.
How small are we talking?
15 people, sometimes on the set, maybe less, maybe 10. That what he succeeded in doing was creating an environment to allow him to experiment and search for the truth of his story. You know, so many directors and filmmakers today have to pre-vision their movie. There's so little time that you determine where the shot is going to be. I'm going to do, you know, like these cameras right now, a 2-shot and 2 singles, or maybe that's over your shoulder. I don't know. That's all pre-visioned, and they're almost editing the movie as they're making it. And Kubrick was never that way. He'd say, okay, and he'd put the actual lens that he was trying to figure out which one, you know, so let's change it, try this one. Okay, let's put the 50. And
a lot of trial and error there.
Go ahead and do it. You know, do this. No, you have to do it. You can't just go half speed. No, let me see what you're going to do, because how do I know what I'm going to do unless you're doing what you're going to do? So there was no, simple rehearsal. You had to go as though you were doing the scene.
Right, full throttle.
Yeah, and so then he'd, try to figure out how he was going to shoot it, get on the ground and look up and try to figure out how best to find the camera, because the camera will tell you, the performance will tell you where to put the camera. And most people just slap it down, put it on a slider today, and there's no art to it. There's no art.
You don't get that time to work through it.
No, there's no art. There's art to it. I mean, that would be unfair to say to so many.
Not the same level that it once was.
But it's not the same level.
Yeah.
You're just kind of capturing information today rather than composing information. A lot of people criticize him. They say, well, how many takes did Kubrick do on that? How many hundreds of takes? He goes, it's such bullshit. He said, you would never go to Picasso and say, hey, Pablo, how many strokes in that painting? Or, hey, Beethoven, how many notes in that song?
Exactly.
Yeah, you would never do that. So why do they care how many takes I do in order to capture the performance that I want? Why? Yeah.
Just give me the budget, give me the runway, let me do my thing.
Yeah. So the trick is to create an environment where you can do that by keeping the crew small, by keeping the elements small, by finding a space that you can film in where you don't have to spend a ton of money for the studio space to I mean, he was the best producer I ever worked with. He was so frugal and so smart how he spent money. He'd look at my shoes, and it's at the end of my diary where he asked me, how much did you spend on those shoes? I got some Adidas Stan Smiths on right now. I said, I paid, I don't know how much these are now, $80. Sure. He goes, I got these at the, one of those department stores, the Costco or something. He goes, I got 8 pairs of these for $80. He goes, what the good thing is, when I get mine dirty and they get stinky, I can throw them out. But you're going to have to get a new pair. You're going to have to spend $80 for one pair of shoes, and I got 8 pairs. But that kind of
represents him to a T right there.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
How about some of the other people you've worked with? I mean, Oliver Stone is in there, Any Given Sunday, Christopher Nolan. When you think about those guys, what do you think about?
I love Oliver. We had a little bit of a rough time while we were making the film, and we've become dear friends since then. But I love the way that Oliver considers information that he's hearing. So you tell me that somebody's a pig and they're rude and they're mean, and he listens, and while he's listening, he's almost trying to sum up who you are and spinning it so that he can see, well, maybe he's not the pig, maybe you're the person that is insufferable and horrible, and you're judging him, but it's actually you. He's always trying to listen and hear another truth and see another perspective. And you see that in his films, where he's always considering another person's point of view and questioning what we believe to be truth. And that kind of constructive thinking today, critical thinking, is so important and so disappearing from our educational system. We always want to question truth.
Yeah,
question everything, and demand that that things be heard from different points of view.
No question about it.
Excuse me.
And Any Given Sunday is one of the all-time great sports movies, on top of everything else.
It was a blast to work on.
Pacino, I mean, he was doing his thing there, and you're just playing the doctor and trying to just fit in there with all those
James
crazy
Woods
egos.
and LL, Cool J, and Jamie, and
a lot of personalities in that movie.
It was James Brown.
Yeah.
James Brown, one of the strongest human beings. I think James was probably in his 60s when we did that movie. And when he shook my hand, it was like he could have crushed every bone in my hand. Yeah, he was so strong, James Brown. Jim Brown, I should say.
No, he's a big dude.
And Cleveland Browns. And who else was on that movie?
I mean, there was a lot of
There was a lot of... You know Anne Margaret from Full Metal Jacket.
That's right.
Does that mean Anne Margaret's not coming? I met Anne Margaret. She gave me a big hug and a smile and said thank you for keeping her relevant,
so cool.
By bringing her up in the movie. It was Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, that's right.
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid, yeah.
It was fun. It was a fun movie to make.
All-timer, that's for sure. So I've mentioned a bunch of projects you've done. I mean, you're an artist that takes the craft seriously. When you think about your whole career, who are some other people under the radar that kind of stick out in your mind in terms of, this was an awesome experience, I loved working with this person, I really respect this person?
Alan Parker. I think he's one of the most underappreciated, important filmmakers of his generation.
Wow.
He did Bugsy Malone, Fame, Midnight Express, Midnight Express, Mississippi Burning, Birdie, which is what I did with him, Evita, you know, some of the other ones. But I mean, Pink Floyd, The Wall. The diversity of his career is unlike any other filmmaker. Yeah, and they're good movies.
No question.
Midnight Express is unbelievable.
Yeah, some people just, you know, they can get buried a little bit, just given the time, given some of the other people they're running with.
Bugsy Malone is brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, Fame. You know.
I mean, come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did it all. So for you, I'm really interested, because like you're famous for turning down certain parts. You know, there's Top Gun, there's Wall Street, there's Back to the Future. When you're making decisions, do you realize in the moment how things are going to change your life? Like, just walk me through your decision-making process with movies and projects, and just kind of how you see the landscape when you're making a decision like that.
Well, Back to the Future, they said I had 24 hours to make a decision.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it was like, what's the rush? Like, what happened? Where's the fire?
Can you give me a little time to think about this?
And they said, well, it's because we're in production, and we just let Eric Stoltz go. And I said, I know Eric. I said, you know, because we were coming up together. I said, what did he do? Why did you get rid of him? And they said that he just didn't see the role the way that, you know, he just it wasn't right. It wasn't a good fit.
You guys weren't in lockstep.
And I thought, well, you know, I have to think of actors in temperature. You know, if you think of a temperature, and I say Eric and I are kind of similar temperature. That I'm not sure that I'm like I don't know that I'm going to be that different than Eric. I don't know that I'm going to be a good fit. And Steven Spielberg's producing it, but he's not directing it. You know, it's some guy named Rob, you know, or Zemeckis. What's it?
And at that point, you're like, who's Zemeckis?
Who's Zemeckis? Right. And boy, I mean, but you know what? I think I've heard that Steven Spielberg's first choice was always Michael J. Fox. And you can't imagine the movie without Michael J. Fox.
Exactly. I mean, it works out for everybody.
Yeah, you know? It worked out. I mean, that was what Spielberg wanted was Michael J. Fox. And Michael was the right temperature for the role. Yeah. His wide-eyed youthfulness and Gosh G. Willikers sort of.
It was perfect.
He was perfect. He was perfect. I can't imagine that franchise having been as successful as it was without Michael. Was it Wall Street?
Wall Street.
Wall Street, it was because Oliver wouldn't give me the script.
This love-hate relationship with Oliver Stone all these different years. You just want a little more of the script.
I just wanted to read more of the script.
Just want to know what's going on.
And he said, I'll send you 10 pages. And I said, look, I'm not in a hurry. I'll wait till you finish the script. And it got kind of like, hey, don't you know who I am? I just won the Academy Award.
Some ego battling going
for Platoon. And I said, it's okay, man. I'm happy to wait. And that he blew a fuse, and that was the end. That was the end. I didn't actually turn that one down. I just said I want to read the script.
Right, and he kind of moved on.
What was that? Oh, Maverick?
Maverick, yeah. Well, now especially with Top Gun 2 coming, you know, that's why the conversation comes back up again.
Yeah, that was purely because I had grown up in Utah. You know, I was born in California. I graduated from. We moved to Utah. My dad was a drive-in theater manager, so we lived there for about 8 years. And then we moved back to Imperial Beach, right by Tijuana. I feel like I'm Mexican. Yo soy mexicano. And because all of my friends that I went to school with were Mexican. And I understand that culture, and I love those people. And the gentleness, the sense of humor. They're very different than gringos, and I think this is kind of
now it all makes sense.
Throwback Chicano,
like
my Chicano roots. And so I received an education that you do, especially on the west side of America, because it's not as multicultural as the East. You know, and especially the diversity that exists in the big cities in the East, in Boston, New York. You know. you know, I mean, so you go across the other side of the Mississippi, and it becomes a whole different ball of wax. And so I did a movie called Mrs. Soulful, and they brought me to Berlin for the Berlin Film Festival, and they asked me, would you like to go to East Berlin? Of course, this is before the wall came down. It's like 1983 or something. I said, I can't go to East Berlin. I'm American.
Right.
And they said, no, you can go to East Berlin because you are an American. I said, okay, I want to go to East Berlin. So we went across, you know, Checkpoint Charlie, and went into East Berlin, and then went to this monument for millions of Russian soldiers who had died on this front, this monument. And I was like, wait, millions of Russians died fighting the Nazis? What?
Yeah, that's not a narrative that we're talking about.
Yeah, I never got taught that in school. No, they said, no, tens of millions of Russians died fighting the Nazis. And I thought, why wasn't I taught that in school? And I met these Russian soldiers. I smoked at the time, and I gave them some American cigarettes, and they gave me pins from their uniforms, and they spoke English. I didn't speak any Russian, so they were really well educated. And then when I came back, I felt betrayed that I hadn't been taught that. And these guys were no different than my brother who had gone to Vietnam.
Sure.
They were just kids.
Yeah.
They were just kids. So when I came back and the Top Gun was waiting for me, and it was something that magnified and perpetuated that the Russians were evil, and it was the Ronald Reagan was the president, and the Russians were evil, and we were just going to perpetuate this lie, you know, this evilness. And politicians and governments are corrupt. You know, businessmen are often corrupt. You know, they do things for profit, and this was something that was going to perpetuate that lie. And I said, I don't have anything to do with it.
You're a man of principle. I can understand that.
And what movie did I do? I waited and waited till Full Metal Jacket came.
There you go.
And that was much more up my alley.
Definitely.
And to the defense of Tom Cruise, I think that I've read that he felt it was a story about individualism and personal strength. And I think for Tom, that's what it was.
Sure.
And you know, I don't know him, but I've met him at Stanley Kubrick's funeral. And he's a principled person, and you know, I think for him, from his perspective, his lens on life,
that's what he was focused on.
That's what he focused on.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible that two different actors can look at a movie like that in two completely separate ways.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, but I'm doing Top Gun 2.
Oh yeah?
No.
Can you imagine? It's like, I'm in, guys. Let's make it happen. You mentioned your dad before as a drive-in movie manager. How cool was it for him to see his son on the big screen?
You know, he never talked about it.
No?
And he didn't, to my knowledge, ever brag about it. I asked him one time, I said, you know, why don't you put my name on the marquee? You know, Matthew Modine, Full Metal Jacket or something.
Yeah.
You know? And he says, I don't want people to think I'm showing off. And that's my dad.
That's
you know?
the humility you're talking about.
Yeah. He taught me an important lesson that I'm the youngest of 7, and we all got jobs at the drive-in. You start with the worst ones, picking the garbage up off the ground, you know, at the drive-in, and you know, collecting garbage and putting the speakers back on the poles, turning them off. And then the next job would be cleaning the bathrooms. And then the next job would be working in the snack bar. And then the best job was being the lot boy, you know, tearing the tickets and just, you know, you had more freedom.
Because you can hang out and watch the movies that
point,
right?
You had tons of freedom. But you have to go through those crappy,
you got to work your way up.
You got to work your way up. And it's an important lesson, because he said, you got to go clean up the bathroom. The toilets are overflowing. And somebody had flushed something down, and I came in the bathroom with the bucket and the mop, and it was about as big as this room, the bathroom, because it was for like Yankee Stadium size bathroom. And I was like, I didn't know where to start. There was so much crap on the floor. It was just brown, and I just was staring at it. My dad came up and he put his hand on my shoulder. Yeah, I know. He says, it's a mess. He says, you can go try to find the person responsible. You can get angry at them, but it's not going to clean it up. And that was an important lesson in my life, is that when you see shit all over the floor, I'm sorry to swear,
no, you're good.
When you see crap all over the floor, You can get angry about it. You can try to find the person responsible, but it's not going to clean it up. And there's so many problems in our world today, financially and economically, environmentally, and we can get angry and point the finger, but it's not going to clean it up. That it's up to each of us to take steps to change our behavior, help other people, to inform them and give them information to make changes in their personal life, because the alternative is unacceptable. I'm a long time, 50-year environmentalist, and there's not much time left.
Yeah.
When we think of the plastic in the ocean, we think of chunks of plastic that we can see, but it's microplastics. There are going to be more plastic in the ocean by 2050, they estimate, than fish. That's crazy. That's the soles of our shoes. It's when you see cars going down the road and you have to replace your tires. Nobody ever thinks about where did that rubber go. It turns into dust.
Right.
When it rains, it goes down the gutter and it eventually finds its way to the ocean. And I don't know what the solution to that is, but there must be somebody who's clever enough to come up with a new kind of tire that doesn't involve petroleum products and vulcanizing rubber and to make a tire. There's got to be a new way forward. And I'm working with lots of people to try to find achievable goals, achievable doing. There's an organization called Do One. If there were 10 things you could do to reduce your carbon footprint or reduce your consumption, would you do 5? Would you do 1? And there is one thing that every one of us can do.
Start somewhere. Power of one. It goes back to your story and this too. There's always something that can be done.
Become a vegetarian 1 day a week.
Right. Yeah.
It would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't, because chickens and cows and pigs require a tremendous amount of energy to produce a pound of meat. So just once a week to be vegetarian.
I think it's all about change too. Some people just can't fathom changing little things, let alone big things. But the people who are willing to say, yeah, I'll try this, or let's, like Miss Virginia, let's do something a little different, right? To bring it full circle. Those are the people that are going to take society to the next level. Well, Matthew, it's been a lot of fun, man.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell everybody when the big day is for Miss Virginia?
Miss Virginia comes out October 18th. It's going to be in movie theaters, and it's going to be streaming on the different kinds of platforms. I don't know all the platforms' names, but Uzo Aduba from Orange is the New Black is the star of the film, and the Oscar race just began because her performance is Oscar-worthy. And I'll be voting for her, and I hope if you're a voter that you'll see this film and make sure that you cast your vote for Uzo, because she's amazing in the movie.
That's a good hype man right there. That's Matthew. I'm DJ. We'll see you next time here on Sit Down.